Welcome to Fight City NYC. My name is Ben Chan and I do the Punch Zone for HBO. We have a lot of boxing to talk about for this coming weekend, but let's first talk about a fight that we didn't talk about a couple of weekends ago during the preview, but we're going to talk about the aftermath. We had Josesito Lopez defeating Victor Ortiz in a big upset. Maybe not the biggest upset of the year so far, but a really, really big upset, because let's talk about Victor Ortiz first. He had a fight lined up versus Canelo Alvarez, which was supposed to happen on September 15th. This was going to be on pay-per-view, so the Josesito Lopez fight was actually supposed to be a tune-up fight for Ortiz. And the original opponent was supposed to be Andre Berto, who couldn't continue with the bout because he got busted for steroids after asking for steroids testing, and after somebody in his camp insinuated that Victor Ortiz might be using steroids. So after Berto dropped out, Josesito Lopez was brought in to be a replacement opponent. And this was a guy who previously had fought on the Floyd Mayweather Miguel Cotto undercard, and he had lost a close fight, and he was moving up from junior welterweight to fight Victor Ortiz at welterweight. And when they got into the ring that night, Josesito Lopez looked like the smaller guy, but man, he was ready to fight. And he came not just to fight and not just to show up and collect a paycheck, but he came to fight. And even though I had Victor Ortiz up slightly in the fight, I had Josesito Lopez coming on, and Ortiz had his moments. He was definitely the stronger guy in the ring, and there were some moments in the fight, and there were some rounds in the fight when he was able to bully Josesito Lopez, but Josesito Lopez was not willing to be bullied for the whole fight, and he had his moments culminating in the 9th round when he actually broke Victor Ortiz's jaw. And look, there's going to be a lot, there has already been a lot said about Victor Ortiz, about whether he has heart or whether he's tough enough. Look, the guy had a broken jaw, and it was a pretty bad break. There have been other fighters that have fought through broken jaws. One fighter that comes to mind is Arthur Abraham versus his bout with Edison Miranda, and then you had, of course, Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton when they fought the first time. And I'm not sure if you can look at the result of this fight and say Victor Ortiz doesn't have heart, because it was a bad break. And unless you're in the ring and you know how it feels to fight with a broken jaw, then it's tough for anybody to Monday morning quarterback. But let's just say that Ortiz definitely isn't in the kind of class that maybe a Diego Corrales or Arturo Gatti or Mickey Ward. He's not cut from the same cloth as those guys. And let's be real, very few people actually are, and very few fighters actually are. So, you know, Ortiz has that strike against him versus Maidana when he definitely did quit when the going got tough. I don't really see this as a quit. I see this as him getting his jaw broken really bad. And this was Josesito Lopez's night. Let's talk about Josesito Lopez. What is he going to do now? Some people have suggested, well, maybe he should get the Canelo fight. I don't think that's going to happen, because the Canelo fight is going to be at junior middleweight at 154 pounds, and Josesito Lopez looks like a small welterweight at 147 pounds. So I don't think it would be wise for him to move up to 154. I think he goes back down to 140, sees what his options are there, and picks a fight there. Or if he decides to stay at 147, he can tangle with the big boys up there. But I don't think moving up to 154 is going to be in his plans. And he's going to rest. He himself had a pretty good black eye, so he's going to rest. He's going to recuperate. But I want to see more of Josesito Lopez. Great win for a guy who wasn't expected, quite frankly, to perform so well. Okay, now let's talk a little bit about the saga of the Canelo Alvarez fight. Now, Alvarez and Golden Boy want to fight again on September 15th. They first announced they want to do a pay-per-view, and then they started looking for an opponent. And then Top Rank came along after Julio Cesar Chavez won his last fight. They decided, no, we're going to have Sergio Martinez fight Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. on September 15th on pay-per-view. And so it looks like that pay-per-view is going to be picked up by HBO. So that fight is going to be lined up for September 15th. And Alvarez, the guy who originally had September 15th, and Golden Boy, they seem like they want to keep their fight on September 15th, but they don't have an opponent yet. Originally, when the fight was announced, there were a lot of names being brought up at 154 pounds. The frontrunners were, of course, James Kirkland, who either suffered a shoulder injury or was coming back slower from a shoulder injury than expected, or he priced himself out of the fight, whatever you want to believe. And then you had Paul Williams, who was all ready for the fight and wanted to do the fight, and they had come to an agreement to do the fight. And then he was involved in the motorcycle accident where he was tragically paralyzed from the waist down. So that didn't pan out. And then you had Victor Ortiz step up and say, I will fight Canelo Alvarez, and that fight looked like it was all set to be done. And then Victor Ortiz gets his jaw broken and gets upset by Josesito Lopez. So now we're back to Canelo Alvarez still looking for an opponent for September 15th. Now, Golden Boy has announced that they're going to announce who the next opponent is, and they say this is going to be historic. There are a lot of people who think that it's going to be Ricardo Mayorga. For those of you who don't know who Ricardo Mayorga is, he's been knocked out by guys like Oscar De La Hoya and lastly Shane Mosley. Mayorga is most famous for at welterweight beating up Vernon Forrest twice and upsetting him. He is a guy who is one of the best trash talkers in boxing, certainly. Definitely not one of the best fighters in boxing. Definitely a shop-worn guy. This is definitely not a pay-per-view fight. Canelo Alvarez versus Ricardo Mayorga. It's not a pay-per-view fight at all. It's a young up-and-coming fighter versus a guy who is shop-worn and who might make some drama because he can trash talk with the best of them. There have been rumors that this fight might end up on network television, CBS, which would be interesting. That would be a good fight, and it would also maybe ensure that this fight doesn't get in the way of the Sergio Martinez Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. fight, which actually looks like this is going to be the more watchable fight that night. So we'll see what happens with Canelo Alvarez. Now let's talk about what we have lined up this weekend. This was supposed to be a card that was the co-feature bout, which was supposed to feature Brandon Rios. Brandon Rios suffered an injury and couldn't make the date, so Top Rank installed Kelly Pavlik into the fight, and Kelly Pavlik's going to be fighting a local guy named Will Rosinsky. Will Rosinsky, who is he? That's what Pavlik's supporters are asking. That's what a lot of people on HBO are asking. Who is Will Rosinsky? Like I said, he's a local guy. He's from Ozone Park. He's got a 16-1 record. He's got 9 knockouts, so that says that maybe he doesn't have world-class power. He has some power, and he is a boxer. He knows how to fight. He last fought in June of this year, and he defeated Aaron Pryor Jr. With a unanimous decision. His only loss was to Edward Rodriguez, a 19-0 fighter. Pavlik, as we all know, used to be the middleweight champion of the world, and he lost his belt to Sergio Martinez, the current middleweight champion of the world. Pavlik has, in recent years, had to deal with personal issues that center around alcohol abuse, and now he's on the comeback trail. Now, who is Will Rosinsky to Kelly Pavlik? Pavlik's fought guys like Sergio Martinez, he's fought Bernard Hopkins, he fought Jermaine Taylor, but not recently. And Pavlik has moved up in weight to super middleweight. Pavlik is still on the comeback trail. He's been taking fights to see where he actually is on the comeback. Will Rosinsky is going to be the best fighter that Pavlik has fought since he decided to come back, and he should represent a challenge to Pavlik. Do I expect Rosinsky to beat Pavlik? That's going to be an upset if it does happen, because Pavlik, again, he used to be the middleweight champion of the world. He's got some world-class pedigree. Now, Pavlik's not the fastest guy in there. He can be a bit plodding at times. His transition from defense to offense can be can be a little bit slow at times, and he gets caught with punches. But he is a world-class fighter. Rosinsky, this is a chance for him to prove himself. This is a chance for him to establish this is his coming out party if he defeats Kelly Pavlik. How Kelly Pavlik does with Will Rosinsky will let you know where Kelly Pavlik is on the comeback trail. Now, the co-main event of the fight is going to be Nonito Donaire versus Jeffrey Mathebula. Sorry about that. Mathebula is a fighter who has never fought outside of South Africa, and this is a unification bout. Mathebula brings in the IBF Super Bantamweight belt, and Nonito Donaire brings in the WBO Super Bantamweight belt, and one of these guys is going to walk out of the ring with both belts. If it's not a draw or no contest or no decision. Okay, now, who is Mathebula? He is nicknamed the Mongoose, so that tells you this is not a guy who's gonna knock out a lot of people. His record is 26-3-2, and he has 14 knockouts. Again, he has never fought outside of South Africa. This is his first fight in the United States, and he is ranked 6th in the world by Ring Magazine at super bantamweight. Who is Nonito Donaire? Well, he is a guy who, depending on who you talk to, is somewhere in the 5 or 10, somewhere between 5 and 10 in the pound-for-pound fighter list. Nonito Donaire, he is a guy who is looking to establish himself. He is a guy who needs to look spectacular if he wants to get the big name fights. There are guys who really want to fight, who are waiting in the wings to fight Nonito Donaire. So I feel that the plan for Donaire is just to beat this guy and then go and take the bigger fights. This is kind of a tune-up fight for Donaire, and for Mathebula, if he won this fight, this would be his coming out party. Who is waiting for Nonito Donaire? Guillermo Rigondeaux, who some people think that Donaire's handlers are trying to avoid. And then you have the great young fighter, Abner Mares. Two really good fights if they can be made, but Donaire's got to pass this test. And Donaire is a really wonderful boxer. He's got power, he's got speed, he fights a little bit awkward, and the knock against Donaire is that sometimes he loses concentration. Sometimes when things can get a little bit easy for him, he takes his foot off the gas pedal and he gets caught when he shouldn't get caught, and he does things happen to him that shouldn't happen to him. But up to this point, he's always performed pretty well. He's had one lackadaisical fight, but you can't really blame the other guy. You can't really blame Donaire when the other guy doesn't want to fight. But so Donaire does really well with guys who come forward. If Mathebula comes forward, we should see Donaire look spectacular. Now, if Mathebula is tricky and performs like a mongoose, then Donaire is going to have a little bit more trouble in his hands. But with his power and with his speed, he should be able to take care of Mathebula. So this is all going to happen on HBO on Saturday nights. So tune in to watch those bouts. And just a couple of other tidbits. Miguel Cotto, he is coming off of his fight with Floyd Mayweather Jr. He has announced, or not announced yet, but there are plans to come back sometime in December. Some people say, well, he's in the running to fight Manny Pacquiao. If that happens, that's going to happen in November. The good thing about, the exciting thing about Miguel Cotto coming back in December is that he's announced that he wants to fight at Madison Square Garden. And this is a great thing because there are very few big fights that happen in New York City anymore. And you got to love a guy who wants to fight at Madison Square Garden, who wants to bring the crowds to Madison Square Garden, because when Miguel Cotto fights at Madison Square Gardens, the fans come out, especially the Puerto Ricans, and the atmosphere in the garden is electric. So I am looking very forward to Miguel Cotto coming back and fighting in December and bringing another big fight to Madison Square Garden. That's always welcome news. And then before we sign up, I just want to say rest in peace Jimmy Bivens. He was a heavyweight fighter from the 40s and the 50s, and he was never heavyweight champion, but there was a time when he was ranked at #1 at both heavyweight and light heavyweight. He is a guy who beat guys like Archie Moore, Edgar Charles, great heavyweight guys. He was also in the ring with Jersey Joe Walcott, Joe Louis, guys that defeated him. He was in the ring with 11 world champions, and he won 8 times. And he was inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. Jimmy Bivens was a tough heavyweight at an era when you had to be a tough heavyweight to be a fighter, and he definitely was able to stand with the best of them in his era. So Jimmy Bivens, rest in peace. Thank you for watching Fight City NYC, and we'll see you next week.